The business case nobody updates. A project team delivers on time, on budget, and exactly to spec. Every milestone hit, every status report green, and yet the problem the project was built to solve had quietly disappeared 6 months earlier. Nobody stopped, nobody asked whether they should. Here's what happens. The business case gets written, it gets approved, and then it gets filed. From that moment on, the project is measured against its plan, not against its purpose. Approval becomes the finish line for justification, and that's where things start to go wrong. This is not a rare failure. On a large ERP migration, the team hit go live, but the regulation they were building for had already been amended. On a financial services transformation, the new operating model landed, but the savings it was supposed to generate never materialized because the assumptions had changed. On a public sector facilities program, the buildings were finished, but 2 of the 3 sites had been deprioritized months earlier. 3 different projects, the same root cause. The root cause is the same in every case. The business case was written to get approval. Once it had done that job, it was filed. No one was accountable for keeping it valid. No one was asking whether the project was still worth doing. That question, is this still worth it, is exactly what PRINCE2's business case practice is designed to keep alive. 3 things make this pattern so persistent. First, approval culture. Once a project is green-lit, questioning it feels like undermining it. The pressure shifts entirely to delivery. Second, there's no named owner. The business case was written to get funding, and once it served that purpose, nobody picked it up again. Third, there's no review rhythm. Nothing in the project's routine triggers a fresh look at whether the justification still holds. So what does the business case practice actually mean in practice? Not the definition, the reality. It means that justification is not something you produce once to get approval. It's a question you keep answering throughout the life of the project. A business case that only exists at approval is a pitch deck, not a management tool. Real justification is a continuous test. At every stage boundary, the project should be able to answer, is the problem still real, are the benefits still achievable, and does the cost still make sense? If it can't answer those questions, it shouldn't automatically continue. A business case that works in practice needs to do 3 things. It needs to name the problem and the person who owns it in the business. It needs to define the conditions under which the project should stop, not just the conditions for success. And it needs a review schedule tied to stage boundaries, so justification is tested at the moments when decisions are actually being made. Here's the mistake that almost every project team makes. When something changes, scope, timeline, cost, the plan gets updated. The business case doesn't. The 2 documents drift apart. The plan reflects reality. The business case reflects a version of the project that no longer exists. It goes wrong in 3 specific ways. Benefits get restated rather than re-examined. The numbers look updated but the assumptions underneath them haven't moved. The executive is listed as the owner but isn't actively defending or challenging the case. And change requests get approved as delivery decisions without anyone asking whether they affect the justification for the whole project. On a large operating model transformation, the program director did something simple. She built a 1-page business case summary and made it a standing agenda item at every stage boundary review. Not a full rewrite, a structured check. It changed every board conversation that followed. A stage boundary review is the natural moment to test the business case. 3 questions. Has the problem changed? Have the benefits changed? Does the cost still make sense? If all 3 answers are yes, you continue with confidence. If any answer is no, the project needs a real decision, not a workaround, not a revised baseline, a decision about whether continuing is still the right call. 3 steps that make this practical. First, name the executive and make their accountability for the business case explicit, not just at approval, but throughout delivery. Second, add a business case review to every stage boundary as a mandatory input, not an afterthought. Third, Define upfront what would make this project not worth continuing. Agree it, write it down, and use it when the moment arrives. On a large ERP migration, a team spent 4 months building a compliance module for a regulation that had already been superseded. They knew, the project manager knew, the team lead knew, but the business case hadn't been reviewed, no one had authority to raise a formal stop, and the delivery pressure kept everyone moving forward. 4 months, gone. Getting this wrong costs more than most teams realize. The first cost is sunk cost delivery. The project becomes its own reason to continue, regardless of whether it still makes sense. The second is misallocated resources, budget and people locked to a project that no longer serves the business, while better opportunities wait. The third is the hardest to recover from, eroded trust. When a project delivers something nobody values, confidence in the whole project management function takes the hit. Here's the reframe. Approval is not a green light that stays on forever. It's permission to start, under the conditions that existed when the decision was made. When those conditions change, the permission needs to be renewed. That's not bureaucracy. That's how you stay in control of your investment. The rule is simple. Justify continuously, not once. Every project needs an executive who actively owns the question of whether the project is still worth doing, not as a formality, but as a genuine management responsibility. When that accountability is real, and when the business case is kept live, the project has a genuine chance of landing on something the business still values. 3 things you can do this week. First, find the business case for your current project and check whether it still reflects what the project is actually trying to achieve. Second, find out who is actively accountable for its validity. If the answer isn't clear, that's the problem to fix first. Third, propose a business case review at the next stage boundary. Frame it as decision quality, not compliance. If your project has a business case sitting in a folder that nobody has touched since it was approved, this is the week to change that. You don't need a formal review process to start. One conversation with the executive is enough to begin. 3 ways to go further. First, has a project you worked on ever kept going longer than it should have? Leave a comment. Your experience is exactly what helps other project managers recognize the pattern before it costs them. Second, the Mimir PRINCE2 practitioner course shows you how to apply every practice on a real project, not just pass the exam. Third, this week, find your business case and check the last review date. If there isn't one, set one now. Share your experience.